Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I have my new breastie friend, Veronika Bubenickova. When Veronika was diagnosed with breast cancer, it unraveled more than just her health. It shook the identity she had built over 2 decades in the corporate world, leading product teams and delivering complex digital solutions. No strategy deck could prepare her for quite the reckoning that followed. Questions about identity, body, and the isolation hidden between the word survivor. Now, through her platform, Lotus Journey, Veronika supports women in the in-between space where treatment may be over, but healing has just begun. She offers more than care plans, space to grieve, recalibrate, and choose what comes next. Her approach blends grounded lifestyle shifts, nutrition, toxin reduction, nervous system care with intuitive healing work like trauma integration and energy-based modalities. It's not about bypassing pain, but meeting it with honesty, patience, and agency. Veronika brings a clear-eyed view of recovery from lingering fear to the invisible work of rebuilding trust in body and self. She speaks to survivors, those in treatment, and their loved ones, gently guiding women towards reinvention, not as something to force, but to grow into. Hello, Veronika. I am so excited that you're on today because this is a topic that oftentimes we don't even talk about, and I believe that it needs to be talked about. And we need people like you out there to guide women and men through this part of the journey. How are you doing today? And we finally got to connect. You're overseas. Tell us where you are. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. It's really honor to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast and giving me the opportunity to share and talk about our stories together and to connect with your audience. I am connecting from Mediterranean, from Malta, where I've recently relocated.
Okay, very cool. Well, my audience usually knows that I'm on video. You've got a great display in the back of, and in your background, it's very beautiful. It kind of goes along with sort of the healing modalities that you put out there. So I would love for you to explain to our audience who Veronika is, just who you were actually before breast cancer and what were you doing in the corporate world?
Before the diagnosis, I was a very career-oriented woman. I was very independent. I wanted to do everything on my own, be self-sufficient. I pushed very hard for success. And that took its toll as well, because I lived for my career and for climbing the career ladder. But even then, there was always something on the back of my mind that was telling me, I want more from this life. I want to be able to look back one day and to say, okay, I was able to contribute to this world in a meaningful way. And that's what I was missing from the career, but I just didn't know I could do anything different. Of course, even financially, I wasn't able to just quit my job and to start something new. And I didn't even know what that would be. I knew that I wanted to write a book. I knew I wanted to help other people, but I even didn't think I had anything to offer to others. So I think that was the biggest shift. Was the old Veronika, always stressed, always busy, but that version of me that didn't quite know myself. Although I wanted to know, and I was around spiritual personal development since I was maybe around 18. Still, I didn't got to the essence of what really makes me tick and what is it that I am really passionate about. And it was the diagnosis that made me think, because I did question my life purpose, because actually just before the diagnosis, I got to the point that I received an amazing job offer. It was a big career progression. It was a huge pay rise. And it was just like, I was kind of living my dream. I felt really healthy. I was really active, running every day, 5 to 10K. So I literally thought, like, I got it all. But the one thing that was bothering me, if you was that I didn't know what's my life purpose. I believe that we all come here with a purpose, and I didn't know what my purpose was. And then when the diagnosis came, which was maybe 2 weeks later after this deep questioning, it was of course, it was devastating. My whole life fell apart. But what made me go into that mode of, I've got this, I'm going to do everything to get through this, and maybe one day I will be able to help others. And looking back, maybe that was the way how I actually dealt with the trauma, how I dealt with why such a bad thing could happen to me. But it helped me greatly on the journey to have the determination that not only I'm doing it for myself, but I'm doing it for potential other people in the future. And that I had a dream, that kind of dream when that one day that maybe never comes, I will write a book. And this was the moment when I started journaling everything. And I knew instantly that when I get through this, I'm starting writing a book. And I did. So, although the cancer diagnosis took a lot from me, it also gave me a completely different perspective. And it accelerated things that I was kind of putting on hold because of building the career and because of trying to sustain myself. And I was just pushing without realizing the moments that we have to cherish, without spending enough time with my family, with my friends, without reflecting enough and giving myself the space to heal physically, emotionally, and to actually tap into in what's really important for me.
Yeah, so there's a theme that I tend to notice is that most of the women that I have interviewed were these really busy, driven women who most of them also were even healthy. They were, you were talking about how you ran every day and you probably were very healthy and maybe people were asking you, my gosh, you were so healthy though. How are you getting cancer? I mean, that's what happened to me. And I was like, I didn't know. Who knew that healthy people could get cancer, right? I mean, I
Exactly.
knew that intellectually, I knew that, but I mean, it was amazing how many people asked me or said something like that to me. It's like, Jamie, but you were so healthy. How, and healthy people can get cancer. But that other theme of being stressed out, very driven, busy all the time, taking care of everyone else before, themselves or whatever it is. But so you knew that you had something that you wanted to do. You just didn't know what it was. And somehow this monkey wrench that turned into be a positive thing kind of came flying at you, gave you cancer. You had to get through that. It seems that sometimes when women are so focused on their career and so busy and taking care of everyone else, that's the strength that we have grabbed onto to help us actually get through the diagnosis itself. So tell us about your diagnosis and what was the diagnosis? When were you diagnosed? How old were you? Tell us all the things, Veronika.
So I was 39, just close to turning 40. And it was end of January, and I came from my Friday afternoon run, had a nice bath, thinking now I'm going to be relaxing and enjoying the weekend. And that's when I noticed the changes where my right breast was very swollen, it was very lumpy, and it was much bigger than the left breast. But then two years before then, I suspected something in the same breast, coincidentally. Uh, but that was benign. But I knew the process. I knew that I would go to GP and they would refer me to a breast clinic, and it would be the standard procedure. And they always refer it as a suspect of cancer, even if they don't think it might be cancer. It's just the procedure of making sure, like the process of prevention of breast cancer. So when obviously it was Friday evening, so I couldn't do anything until Monday morning. So Monday morning I went to the GP and I knew instantly they will refer me to the breast clinic. And you start like thinking about it, like what could this be? And at first I thought, well, I was before my period, so maybe it's hormones. And then when I got to the GP, she said exactly the same. Well, maybe you will notice that it will just, go back to normal within a few days, but I will refer you to the clinic anyway. And then within the 2 weeks, I was waiting for the examination at the one-stop shop clinic. At first, I tried to be like really like positive and it will be fine. But then the period came, it left, and then the breast didn't get any better. So I started thinking, well, maybe I injured myself. Maybe just because I'm quite clumsy sometimes. So maybe I just hit myself in the breast and it's swollen or something. But 2 days before the appointment at the clinic, I had another lump size of a grape popping on top of my breast. So it was literally like sticking out. So I could feel the hard lump. And that was when I started to panic. What also kind of freaked me out was day after, someone who didn't know what I was going through, that I was awaiting this examination, and then I found some changes in breast, sent me a video of a TED talk from Anita Moriani, who had a near-death experience, and she had advanced stage of cancer. And she was talking about how she actually touched the other side and got back and healed.
Wow.
And it was almost like I knew it was really bad, and it was almost like a sign from somewhere that maybe, that my situation's not good, but I didn't want to admit it at all. So when I got to the breast clinic, I was still like thinking, well, I will convince myself that I'm healthy and all will be fine. But unfortunately, they did the ultrasounds, the mammograms, examined me physically, and then even throughout that process at the clinic, there were signs already that looking back, I could have read through, but I didn't, because I didn't want to even admit that, it could be something serious like cancer. So when they told me to then get dressed and then go to another room to make an appointment, I still thought it will be just making an appointment, because I thought I will be waiting for the results of the biopsies and that will take time. And somehow I will be able to prepare myself for it. But they opened the door to the room, nice pink cushions, beautiful decorated room. And I knew, this is the room when they tell you the bad news.
Oh, gosh.
And yeah, they brought me hot chocolate. They sat me down and they said that from what they've seen, it's 99% cancer. And I remember that moment was like, I was just dreaming. Like I literally felt like I left my body. Like I wasn't there, and I was just observing and couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. My whole life obviously fell apart. And because obviously at that point, no one knew if it was curable or not. They thought that it's usually treatable, but they can't know at that moment. And on that day, I was meant to visit my friend just after the appointment, and that was the best thing that could have happened to me. It wasn't didn't obviously planned for it, but if I didn't have that coffee arranged with my friend, I wouldn't know where to go. I wouldn't know what to do with myself, because I came to the hospital on my own. And I remember driving to my friend's house, who lives 15 minutes from the hospital, for maybe 45. I probably shouldn't have been driving either, because I was just forgetting to turn and then just drove somewhere else. And I was completely out of, I couldn't process the information. So it was very, very strange moments. And then when I got to my friend, he tried to cheer me up, and he spoke to me for 2 hours maybe. And I remember, you listen to him, but you're not there. But then when I was leaving their house, I remember reaching for the handle of my car. And then suddenly it was all the time, all these hours, I was just processing the information. Like my head was a computer, and I was trying to find the result of a very slow motion of a Google search or something. And then as I was reaching for the handle, it was like something clicked. And I turned around, looked at my friend and said, I don't know how, but I've got this. I'm going to get through this no matter what the results are. And then since that moment, I remember then driving another 40 minutes back home. It was like I was creating a little action plan. I didn't know much, but I knew I need to look at what I'm eating. I've heard that people use juicing to boost their immune system and to help them to support the recovery. I knew I will do spiritual healing, emotional trauma healing, everything I knew that could potentially be linked somehow to the disease or any imbalance in the body. So it was like a little brainstorm of things I was going to do. And that since that moment, I was on a mission. And I think that helped me probably being the woman hyperachiever, having that goal and go for it, helped me to put my mind a little bit at ease. Although obviously there were many other moments when I was completely broken down and in pieces.
Yeah. But, so you're the fixer. You strike me as the person who would have a plan for a friend if she was also told that she had cancer or he had cancer, that, okay, here's the plan. Wheels are already turning of what the plan is. So yeah, that's really interesting. And I will say that I did not get chocolates, Veronika. That's a really good touch. It's like, I've never heard anybody come in with chocolates to tell them they have cancer.
It didn't help
Uh,
much, though. I didn't even finish it, to be honest.
I mean, I had never even thought about that. Why don't all places do that, right? But then of course they're like, "Oh, here we go. They're going to tell me I have cancer." Well, that is great that you were able to go hang out with your friend and you just sort of to help you process that. So, what ended up being the diagnosis? What kind of breast cancer? What stage was it?
So it was HER2 positive, and it was invasive ductal carcinoma, so spreading really fast. That's why another lump size of a grape appeared within a space of 2 weeks, because it was fast growing. Basically, the whole right breast was covered in the calcification. There were 2 tumors, grades 2 and 3, and the lymph nodes looked. Now I remembered something. The lymph nodes looked inflammatory,
Mhm.
so like they could have been affected by the cancer. So they took a couple of biopsies from the lymph nodes, but at the end they said they only looked like that they inflamed, but they didn't show that they would be cancerous. But when I got to my first appointment with the oncologist, she went through all the results with me. And then she was talking to me in the way like the lymph nodes were cancerous. And I just told her, but I was told that they are just inflamed, not cancerous. And she looked at me and said, well, I don't think so. So there was a moment when, if I wasn't like already quite hyped with, I've got this and I'll do, positive thinking, and I will not get this to me, whatever they tell me. Like there was a moment when I thought, well, what this can do to people when they told something like that. Because what it was, like what she actually meant was, until they take the lymph nodes out, they can't be 100% sure
Mhm.
if they are really, if there's not any microscopic particle of the cancer in them. But she said it that way that
Yes,
it was
but what
like,
you heard, what you heard was different. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my oncologist did that to me too. I was told that it was just inflamed, and then she told me that I would need radiation because it made it to my lymph nodes, and I said, well, that's not what I was told. And in the end, it wasn't in my lymph node. They did remove some to test them, but it was kind of scary that she said that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
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 So were you estrogen, progesterone negative or positive?
Negative.
Okay, so
And
you and I had the same diagnosis.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Her too. Yeah.
And were you stage 2?
Oh, 2 and 3. So I had
Okay.
2 tumors, and one was 2
Okay.
and one was 3.
Okay. So then, once you found out the diagnosis, what were the treatments like?
So yeah. So I think that's the moment of, because I my plan was to start with 5.5 months of chemotherapy.
Mhm.
So every 3 weeks, one treatment. So it was 7 treatments in total. And then I had a little break, and then mastectomy. And then radiation was still questionable because it depended on whether the lymph nodes will have some cancerous particles or not. So what I think the breaking point here is, and you know exactly what I will say, that you're going through feeling absolutely healthy, but being very sick, but just not knowing about it,
Mhm.
into feeling completely defeated by the chemo that will make you healthy. So I think this is just like a really moment when you realize that you need to go from feeling healthy to feeling completely unhealthy in order to get better.
It's one of the most bizarre exhaustion feelings I've ever gone through. And it's hard to explain. Like, you're not just tired all the time. Like, you are so exhausted that it's hard to sleep. For me, it was hard to sleep. I tried so hard, and every time I fell asleep, I would wake up like 3 minutes later. So it was just this, your entire body is just exhausted. And I think what cancer patients need to keep in mind, and I tried to keep this in mind as much as I could, that the efficacy of the chemo, I just kept telling myself that it was working. Like, the chemo was inside me. I'm supposed to feel this way. It's going in, it's getting the cancer. And that was the main reason I was able to make it through the way that I did. Yeah.
I can relate to this, and I was really fortunate because so I was really into like the mind body healing and interested into how actually our mind can influence the body. And that was before I was diagnosed, and I did a few courses on a Silva method, which is kind of like controlling your own mind. And when I was diagnosed, I started to attend like bi-weekly calls with the instructors. And it was actually one of the instructor who told me, because I was worried about like starting the chemo. And he actually explained to me that mind-wise, it's much worse thinking about the fear of what it will do to you, whether short-term or long-term. Because, there are all sorts of things you can read online and you can easily freak out,
Right.
very much so. And then on the other side, you read about all these people who healed naturally. And then you think like, well, why I have to go through chemo? And, there are people healing naturally. And it's just so much like conflict within it was within me. But he said, you have to not opt out because you fear the chemo. You have to see it as your best friend. And he taught me like techniques, how to work with visualizing that the chemo, when I'm getting the treatment, I was literally trying to visualize how it goes just in the cancer cells and it doesn't affect the other cells. And then I was continuing visualizing how I can do the things I normally can do again, because that means that I recovered. So I kind of, in my mind, always focused on the positive, although there were side effects and I had side effects too, but I never like dwell on them and try to like always visualize the next day or the next afternoon that I will feel already better. So he helped me to really like focus the mind on where I want to get to rather than, this chemo is really making me feel horrible. And then you read, all sort of side effects. And it actually helped me to then realize that whatever we do, whether that's changing lifestyle, whether that's choosing if we go with conventional treatment or opt out, whatever we do, we have to do because we believe in it.
Right.
And because we do it from the place of love to ourselves, that we wanted to heal. And we all have different paths and different things work for different people. So there is no simple hint for everyone. But I do believe that whatever we do, even in life, not just in cancer recovery, we have to do it because we believe in it and it is what we want to do for ourselves.
Right.
Rather than focus on fear. Because if we do something out of a fear, firstly, it doesn't last very long. And then we actually get into the guilt of breaking some rules. For example, if I choose to have healthy diet and then I have something that's unhealthy, then if we do it from the place of fear, we tend to feel guilty after that. And that guilt also builds up the negative energy and the negative thoughts. So that's why I always say to everyone, whatever you choose, whatever is right for you, you have to do it because you want to do it that way.
Right.
And it resonates with you.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I think, I remember being so fearful at the beginning. Oh my gosh, I was so fearful. And then once I got through the first chemo and kind of had an understanding of what it would feel like, that helped because I remember asking one of my I taught these twins actually when they were in middle school, and their mom was going through breast cancer at the time. And she was incredibly helpful to me when I got diagnosed. And I remember texting her one day and I said, I'm just so scared. And she said, What are you scared of? And I said, I am scared of the chemo. And she goes, Well, what about the chemo are you actually frightened of? And I said, I feel like it's going to be this big monster that's going to come inside my body and just ravish it, and it's just going to be this dark, like that's how I felt. And she says, I wish so much that you have already gone through your first cycle, because then you will have an understanding of what it's going to feel like and when you're going to start feeling better, and then when you're going to start even feeling better than that. And she was right. I remember getting through my first one, and just like clockwork, like everyone said, you're going to feel horrible probably for the first 4 or 5 days. And then you'll start to incrementally feel better. By the second week, you'll feel a little more like yourself. And by the third week, back to yourself. And that's essentially what happened. I mean, there were things that happened in between, like nosebleeds and all, things like that. But for the most part, I was able to get a grasp on how my life was going to go for the next, 5 months or whatever through those cycles. And every 3 weeks, I asked my husband, can we do something normal, like go camping? So we had a camping trip planned every 3 weeks at somewhere different where we had never been before, just to get out there and enjoy nature. That was extremely helpful to me because that's something that I was able to look forward to, right? So I could picture my life at that time, and it was so helpful. So I think what you're saying is so valuable, because I think we get inside of our heads so much, and that fear just really, strangles us. And to be able to hear someone like you say that, I think it makes it a lot more doable for people, right?
Absolutely. And this is amazing what you just said, because like on the reflection, I was the most afraid of, maybe it's the fear of unknown. It's the perception and assumptions that we make about chemo before we have the experience. And like you, I had someone actually from the Silva Method community who knew what I was going through, and they messaged me and said, "Well, I'm just recovering from it. So if you want to have a chat, you can have a chat." And I remember this lady called me. I mean, we never met. It's just like, because she knew she could resonate and she wanted to help, she offered to talk to me. And she actually said exactly like how she experienced it. And then she said, always, try to do normal things when you feel better. And she told me one great advice. Simple thing is, she said, just try to laugh a lot. Laugh to as many things as you can. Find things to laugh about, because it will just makes it easier. But similar to what you said, you went camping like every 3
Mhm.
weeks. I actually, when I reflect on the whole 5.5 months of chemotherapy, I have so many good memories, which sounds bizarre, but because every time I recovered and I felt better, I almost like tried to make most of it. I
Yeah.
knew I have like 2 weeks left, 1 week left, and I wanted to do this weekend and then go somewhere and then drive to the seaside and just be. And I was kind of like living my life compared to the career driven life before, when it was just work, 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 and thinking about work. And even when I went for a walk, I would think about work. And this was different.
Mm-hmm.
I suddenly like switched to what the life should be about.
Yeah.
During that time when I felt better, because I
Right.
knew then it will hit me again, and then I will be recovering. So I think this is probably the most important message to everyone who is now going through breast cancer and chemotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
is to try to make most of the days when you feel better.
Gosh, I've never heard anybody say it quite like that. I will say that I look back and I remember everything pretty vividly. And those camp trips, I remember very vividly. And you're right. I was living my life. And I don't know whether I told you this in our pre interview, but I had just retired. So everything prior to that was work, 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 work. I lived my life too, but it was all about work. And when I was going through the chemo, literally right after I retired, I was really living my life. I was, obviously dealing with the ickies, when I was going through the chemo, but those camp trips were amazing. And I also remember that at the very end, towards the very end of my chemo, it was like on my birthday, I think it was in October. We went paddleboarding up at Lake Tahoe dressed as witches. It was a witches paddleboarding. And I'll never forget that day. That was such an amazing day. I had a long purple wig and a witch's costume, and I went paddleboarding. I'll never forget that day. Yeah. And I remember I was going right into the chemo the very next day, I think it was. But then I ended up not getting the chemo because my hemoglobin was super low. I had this really rare anemia that I developed during the chemo. And so I ended up not getting the chemo the next day. Instead, I had to go get a blood transfusion. But still, it was on my birthday. That was a memorable one for me. So, oh my gosh, do you have a little kitty in the background?
Yeah,
Hi.
he was a very little, and he wants to jump on on the keyboard.
It's okay. Sometimes my dog, comes in here and peeks in. So I just saw her. Is it a black cat?
It's a black and white cat.
Oh
Yeah,
my
Matt.
gosh, I just saw the tail.
Yeah,
Um,
he's
Speaking
trying
of
to get in.
Halloween and witches, oh hi, hi little babies. Oh, what a beautiful cat! Wow, yeah, very cute. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and let's fast forward. We're through the chemo. You had your mastectomy. You had the deep flap surgery as well, just like I did. Yes,
I did at the end, yes.
tell us about that.
So before I actually made the decision, because I would say that the whole chemo process, I was kind of aiming in my head for being able to avoid the operation. I was so frightened to. So once you master the chemo, then the next fears come along.
Right.
And then I was so frightened that I wouldn't feel complete if I lose my breast. And I don't know, I just set it in my head that maybe I don't need the operation if the chemo removes the
Right.
cancer. But obviously, they told me that they would do the mastectomy anyway, because the tissue had been already impacted. But I don't know, I was just still aiming for like be cancer free before the operation. And there's actually two things in parallel. So one was that the last scan after the last chemo showed that like the breast was clear of the calcification, but there was still around 2 millimeters of tumor left. And I remember I was so like disappointed. I was meant to be grateful. I even felt like I was disgraceful because it still shrunk, but I just
Right.
wanted to be like clear of it. And what was really interesting, I think if it was clear, I would have been on that edge of should I opt out from the operation or should I not? But because there was still cancer remaining, I just went with the operation. But when they actually took the tissue out throughout that operation and sent it to the lab, they didn't find any cancer. Mm-hmm. So I kind of think, yes, so, I made it, but it was meant to be for me to actually get to that stage when I was going through the last scan. And there was another thing in parallel that happened, because throughout chemo, they called me once and they said, oh, you've got something on your lungs and it's looks like a rare condition that puts pressure on your blood vessels, and it's like a lifelong condition. And they booked me for appointment with respiratory team. But this condition would mean that I wouldn't be able to do reconstruction at the same time, because you wouldn't be able to do longer operations. And they scheduled the appointment with the respiratory team just after the operation. And it was, I was really fortunate that my plastic surgeon actually noticed that. And he said, can you bring that appointment forward? Because maybe it's just a side effect of the chemo. Maybe you don't have the condition at all. And I'm glad he actually made that point, because we brought the operation forward. It showed that it is impossible for me to have this condition because of other tests. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I could go for the bigger operation, and I could go for the reconstruction at the same time. So why I'm actually sharing this, just I always say to everyone who's going through breast cancer, you kind of need to be in control of what's going on. Yep. Because although they are all experts in their fields, there is no project manager, if you like, to kind of connect all the dots together. Mm-hmm. And it is up to us to actually take care of that. Because what it would have, if I wasn't, and even if the plastic surgeon didn't point this out, I would have opted for mastectomy. Mm-hmm. And then I would have to wait another at least a year or maybe 2 for the reconstruction. Because once the cancer's gone, then at least in the UK, you get at the bottom of the priority list. So it makes then the waiting longer. So luckily, I could do everything in one go. So I had the ep flaps from the tummy. And that's another quite kind of, it's a black humor, but it's a funny story. At the beginning of the year, before I was diagnosed, I always had a little tummy fat. It's just always, even when I was active, I never got rid of it. And I said to myself at the beginning of the year that I want to achieve the flat tummy. But I kind of imagined that I would go to the gym or, hire a personal trainer and got it that way. But of course, when the cancer diagnosis came to my life, and then I was selecting the type of reconstruction, and I was recommended to have the reconstruction from the tummy fat. That was the first time I was actually really grateful that I had the fat around my tummy. Because I could go for this type of operation because I just didn't want to have the implant, because I would then need follow-up operation. So it was my kind of thing to use the tummy fat for the breast. But I would say be careful what you wish for, because I did achieve the flat tummy, but the way that I would never expect it to.
Right. Exactly. It's kind of like my short hair. I never would have cut my hair short on purpose. But since I lost it all and then, it was growing back, it's like, oh, I'm keeping it fairly short. And I used to have long hair like you. And, I just always thought, oh, I could never do short hair. I wouldn't look good with short hair. And now I actually like it. So it's like, things happen for whatever reason, and this is why it happened for me. So your surgeon, and I want to go back for a second into something that you said about making sure that you're paying attention and advocating for yourself and listening to what the doctors are saying, because I think it is a common theme for breast cancer patients and anyone who's going through cancer for that matter, that we hear different things from different doctors and sometimes they don't connect. And that was the same thing that happened to me with this rare anemia. Well, a couple different things. The rare anemia thing, my oncologist thought it was a an iron deficiency, when in fact it was actually a very rare anemia called pure red blood cell aplasia anemia. Who knew? I've never
Ew.
even heard of such a thing. And it came out of another tumor that they found, and it was emitting these antibodies that were attacking my red blood cells as they were being produced. So I had to get a bunch of blood transfusions. But my oncologist kept telling me to go get more iron and eat more bloody red steaks. Whereas another oncologist came out one time when she was gone, and he looked over my records and really, really looked him over. And he says, I think what's happening is, and he told me what he thought was happening. And that is when my oncologist referred me to UC Davis in California. And that's when I found out what was really happening with my body. And then I also got even a third opinion, and we were able to take care of it. But if it wasn't for him telling me that, me listening, and then me advocating for myself, and getting other opinions, then who knows where I would be. But I just think that that's a really good piece of advice too, is to be able to listen, pay attention to what people are talking about, what the doctors are saying. And because doctors are human beings too, they are not infallible. And it's not that they're not good. It's just that, we know just as much as we know, right? But being able to advocate for ourselves. So going back to your surgeon, your breast surgeon, is this someone who you were referred to? Is this someone who is very well known as a microsurgeon in the area? How did you come about that person?
Yeah, so they were all like I was allocated to them because it was through NHS, so it wasn't through private care. But with the breast surgeon, I never really explored it. I think I was just like so overwhelmed. I know now I would definitely seek more opinions than one,
Okay.
but I can't say like I didn't trust him or anything. He always, like, everything he said made kind of sense at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And the plastic surgeon, also I was allocated to him, but I did learn about him that he was quite a well-known plastic surgeon in our area.
Mm-hmm. And are you happy with your results?
I am, yes.
Good. It is scary though. I mean, my friends wanted to have boob a boob funeral for me. I don't remember what they were calling it. They were calling it some sort of thing where because as women we are very attached to our breasts. Most of us are. I mourned them, man. I was really upset, and like you, I was going in because my chemo worked very well and shrunk the tumor tremendously. In fact, yesterday I posted on Facebook that I had gone in and got my scans, and found out that the chemo in fact had shrunk that tumor to the point where they barely even could feel it. And so I was so excited about that. And I thought in my mind, maybe I'll just be able to get a lumpectomy. When I went in to see my surgeon, she said that we needed to take the left breast. And I was just devastated again because I thought for sure that I wouldn't have to do that. And I really did go through some major emotions about all of that. But in the end, I ended up going to New Orleans, Louisiana, and getting my surgery there because a hospital there was referred to me by 3 different people. And I am very thrilled with my experience there. My surgeon, Dr. Cabling, who I've interviewed on this podcast, is amazing. And I went to him for phase 1 and phase 2. And, he's really very empathetic and wants women to feel good about their bodies. He likes to be able to help women get to a point where they'd feel pretty again. You know what I mean? And so I really appreciated that about him. and we had a great conversation on my podcast. He's just very, very skilled. And it's super important for people to find a very skilled, fellowship trained microsurgeon to do that type of surgery, because that surgery is no joke, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think mine was planned for 9 hours and it took 12 hours at the end. Not because there was some complication with me. I think because there was also like a strike on that day. So I don't know if they didn't have enough staff. I don't know what happened, but I was asleep. But I know it took.
I don't even know what happened. I was asleep.
I mean, all my family was obviously stressed, but I was having a nice nap. Um, so yeah, 12 hours is definitely a big operation.
Now, did you go for a phase 1 and a phase 2?
So what? Depending, what you mean by phase 1 and 2?
So
So they.
for phase 2, I went back in and they did a lift, and they went in to my stomach and did a little bit of liposuction to get rid of that little poof, because sometimes you kind of get that little poof in there. They call it the Ken doll. And I didn't want that. And you also sometimes can get those dog ears on the side. So they went to take those out, and then they did a little lipo, and then took that and put it into my breast to do a little lift.
Yeah, so there were like two phases, but so with the tummy that was completely all good, so we didn't do any adjustments there.
Mm-hmm.
But then with the breast, because the breast ended up bigger, quite significantly. Like it was, I mean, if you saw me like in like a t-shirt or top, you wouldn't necessarily notice, but I noticed because it was almost like I needed different size of bra on each breast. Which
Right.
was then either it was too small on one side or too big on the other. So so they did adjustment and they adjusted so they now like similar size.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, like I was even saying to my plastic surgeon, that I'm actually like happier with the reconstructed breast than with the perimenopausal other natural breast. So I think for me the biggest challenge, like after I accepted the fact of going through the operation and everything, I think it still is that it's not completely even, because I like things like evenly, like even at home everything's kind of like in order. So yeah, so when I look at it, it's all fine, but you bent forward or something, and it's just there are things that obviously are not the way how I
They
would
were.
like.
Yeah. And
How
then,
they
I mean,
were.
let's face it, they don't look the same. They just don't.
Yes.
And mine don't look the same. And I remember us talking to you, have 3D nipple tattoos as well. I do.
Yeah,
I went and got,
I'm planning to. Yeah, I
Oh,
can't
okay.
still. Yeah, because they didn't allow me to have it yet because they wanted to settle properly, and then I'll have the 3D tattoo
Okay, you're
definitely.
going to be very pleasantly surprised. It's very fascinating. I'm actually going back to get a touch up in December. I'm going to San Antonio, where I got my first ones from a medical spa called Perky. And they're two oncological nurses who do those 3D and 4D nipple tattoos. And I did that. God, it's almost been a couple of years now. But I'm going back there to do a touch up in December. So I'm super excited about that.
That's really good.
Okay. So for our last few minutes of our conversation, I want to talk about Lotus Journey Coaching and Consultancy, what you're doing in your survivorship. How are you out there helping other patients and survivors, like you said, in that in-between stage?
So at first, would mention the book because the book is fairly new. It
Yes.
took some time to write, but and originally the book was meant to capture my story, and then all the tools and tips I used on my journey, and the things I researched and so on. But then it ended up to be too long, and the publisher says you have to cut it down. So I had to take this stuff out. And so what I did turn it into like an online course.
Okay.
But the book is available, and it was launched in October officially. Really, really happy. One of my dreams came true. It felt really surreal to actually hold the book in my hands. So it's available on Amazon or on my website. If you order it on my website, for listeners who are in EU and UK, I can post it through my website and put a handwritten note as well. But for listeners in the States, I think the postage would be more expensive than the book. So it's better to order it on Amazon.
Okay. And we'll make sure we'll put that link in the show notes as well. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I run monthly, I call them like healing circles, and like a variety. I'm doing like one is meditation circle, one is healing circle, where they ended up usually very similar, and they are free spaces where women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, but also survivors who maybe still struggle or just find it difficult to move forward. So what we do, like it's the same event, but it's always different because it depends. It's usually different women joining and with different challenges. So we always talk about what is related to them. So I do follow some structure, but usually I try to tailor it to the women who join the circles and what is their biggest challenge at that time, to help them to use their mind, how to focus on healing rather than on the illness, and give them like strategies and like kind of homeworks to do that can help them to relieve stress, anxiety, the fear before or another scan. And also we touch the diet and the nutrition. So it's like a variety of topics to cover. Sometimes it's about trauma healing. So these are like open to anyone as many times as they want. And then I do one-on-one work, which is either when we go into the trauma healing, because I am a believer that every trauma that we've been through causes an imbalance somewhere in our body or in our energetic body or in our physical body eventually. And then these traumas needs to be cleared in order to enhance even the recovery journey. And also the cancer journey itself is a trauma. And I think that's what we sometimes forget, because even like patients who are into the spiritual healing and they really interested into this psychosomatic spiritual causes of any imbalances in the body and try to like tap into these, then sometimes forget that once they finish the treatment, there is another trauma to be healed, because it's the cancer that needs to be healed. Otherwise, it can again stay with us. I mean, it always be part of us, but if it's kind of unresolved, it can cause further issues down the line. So that's one of the topics. And I'm starting to tap into like intergenerational traumas as well, because that's something that already has been scientifically proved, that we can inherit traumas for generations down on the epigenetic level. So I found it quite fascinating. And then I run like a 6 months or 12 months transformational programs, which are essentially 101 programs to go through everything. So I become a part of someone's healing journey. And we will look at the physical element, which is the diet, the toxins. Then we look at how to tackle the mind. Then we look at the emotional healing and the spiritual connection and purpose beyond the journey. So that's quite an intensive program with a lot of sessions. And I do hold space probably for a maximum 5 women at the same time, because it's quite...
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to ask you how many people at a time are usually on there. That probably is a nice amount of people, because if you get too many on there, not everyone gets to really savor what's happening and get a lot out of it. I think that's so great. And so on your website, lotus-journey.com.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure that I have all of that information in the show notes, how to get a hold of you, and all the things. So I just really think that there are certain people who, after we get through the first part of cancer journey, there are people who surface and are able to help other survivors or other patients. And I'm just so grateful to who I stumbled upon when I was going through it, when I was first diagnosed, and then going through. And then, of course, became a podcaster and a nonprofit. I run a nonprofit through Test Those Breasts. And I just think it's so important for all of us to be out there. And I had a friend of mine when I was first diagnosed that told me that this is the sisterhood of all sisterhoods. And it really is, and I have other friends who've had different kinds of cancers that they don't feel like there is that big of a sisterhood. So I feel like all categories of cancer should have some sort of a sisterhood or brotherhood so that people can get, the most support that they possibly can get, because that is what gets us through, right? So
It is definitely.
Yeah. I really appreciate your being here with me, Veronika. I know it took us a few times to connect because of our time difference, and but we did it. We did it. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with before we disconnect today?
I think I would follow on what you've just said about the sisterhood or brotherhood, because I would say when we surround ourselves with people, or when we need to seek someone to follow when we are diagnosed, I think the key is to start following people who have been through what we've been through and get to where we want to be.
Yes.
So don't follow people who will scare you. Don't follow people and groups where you will just read about all the side effects and how bad it is. For the people who have the energy to lift your spirits up and to take you the other side of the journey.
Right. And I would add to that, Veronika, I so agree with that. I had a friend of mine that told me the only thing she tells me not to do is don't Google stuff, because you can really get yourself down a rabbit hole. I had to sort of back out of certain groups on Facebook where all I did see was this doom and gloom. It was getting to me. But what I will add is that, yes, we do want to surround ourselves with people who are going to get us through and give us, their experience and what they did to help themselves. Good. We also want people to be able to be there to hold space for us. They want people to be there not to minimize how we are feeling, right? Because when people minimize what we're going through, that makes it even worse. So there is space to be able to be held for, I understand how you're feeling. I remember being there myself. Your feelings are valid. What you're feeling inside your body physically is valid. You need to honor that. And then there's another side of, let's do some healing. Let's do some breathing work. Let's talk this out together so we can get you through. I just feel like there's space for both of that. And it sounds to me that is exactly what you're doing. So congratulations on your book. Again, it is called Diary of a Soul Reborn, and I will have the link on the show notes and your website. So thank you, Veronika. I know it's nighttime where you are and you're probably exhausted. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. And again, thank you to my audience for joining us on this episode of Test Those Breasts, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, and bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.